Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video for the Road to Rotation. Up next on this week we have the green-yellow Arlong from OP03. He is a 5,000 power leader with 4 life in the green and yellow colors with Dawn ×2 when attacking. You can rest 1 Dawn to play up to 1 character with a cost of 4 or less and a trigger from your hand. For those who are familiar with the blue Doflamingo, this ability works pretty similarly. The biggest differentiating factor is it is not a form of card advantage. Doflamingo playing out of the top of your deck means that you're not going down in hand size when you play it, whereas this one does. The trade-offs you get with this one is you are running more than 1 color, which is the main advantage there, and you are playing with a kind of more open archetype in those trigger cards. So it's a little bit of here and there, but they end up playing out pretty similarly. This is a very aggressive kind of board spammy deck, and with that kind of out of the way, let's go over some of the Arlong cards specifically, because I think they'll give some good indication of where we want to be looking with our deck. So first up, we have this 3-cost 4,000 power 1k counter Arlong from EVO2. He has on play if your leader has a Fishman or East Blue types, give up to 1 Rested Dawn card to one of your leaders, then up to one of your opponent's characters that cost 5 or less cannot be rested until the end of your opponent's next turn. So the way this one synergizes in with this leader is that it effectively only costs 2 because you get to put a Rested Dawn on your leader, and you are always going to be using the Rested Dawn because of this. And then it is really good at disabling blockers, making this 2k or the 7k swing pretty meaningful. So definitely a card that, although it does not have trigger itself, is a pretty reasonable card to play as in some numbers as a way to get through blockers in the end game or freeze characters so that they can't swing back at you as well. So it does a little bit of double time. But yeah. Next up we have from OP06 the 4-cost 6,000 power no counter Arlong with on play. You may trash 1 card from your hand. Up to 1 of your opponent's rested leaders cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. And then he has a trigger of rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters at a cost of 4 or less. So just a very efficient, with this capped out at 4. This is usually about the biggest power you can get out of a guy, and you get to stun their leader, which makes your board easier to defend on the following turn. So pretty good. The biggest downside to this one being that he's no counter, and that the ability costs an extra card in hand, meaning you drain your hand pretty quickly playing this card. Final Arlong card that we have that fits in our colors is this green one from OP11, which is a 7-cost 7,000 power with 1k counter. And if your leader has a Fishman type, and you have 3 or less life cards, and your opponent has 5 or more rested cards, give this card in your hand -3 cost. So that's a lot of different criteria, but it does make it into a 4-cost 7k. And the way that One Piece works, that does make it eligible to be played out with your leader ability. So something to watch. The main restriction here that's the hardest to work around is the opponent's at 5 or more rested cards. Because attached Dawn does not count as rested, it can make it kind of difficult to get this out. But if you can, it is quite an effective card to get out as a really efficient body. And then it also has a trigger of rest one of your opponent's characters at a cost of 4 or less, meaning that you can get around blockers or get out of attacks that might otherwise be kind of lethal. Because you're going down in hand size, you sometimes have to defend pretty aggressively in the end game, and being able to trigger out a kind of stun can be pretty useful in surviving. So those are the Arlong cards. And then let's hop into some of the different categories of cards you might want to include. First up, we have the East Blue. These are ones that we saw in the last video. These are all cards that would be playable with Kuro as well. We have our Searcher, the 2-cost 2K with Trigger Searcher, top 5 for an East Blue. We have Buggy. This is one of the better ones with Arlong, because your leader is already attacking to use the ability. Giving your leader double attack during the turn is a pretty strong ability. Main downside to this one, he has no counter. But otherwise, just everything about this card seems to work pretty well with Arlong, especially if you can find a spot where your opponent does not have a blocker. Next up, we have a 2K that can be played out of life just to give you those surprise attackers. We have Lord of the Coast, who works similar to how the Arlong leader, the 4-cost Arlong works, but instead it freezes a rested character instead. So another just kind of pretty okay body. Good at stunning because it does not specify any cost restrictions. So you can stun anything with this one, which can be pretty good. And then finally we have this Django, who doesn't have trigger and costs more than 4, which isn't usually good. But being able to set up to one of your East Blue type leaders or characters with cost of 6 or less is active is great, because you can stack 4 on your leader, swing paying, well, no, you would do 3 on your leader, swinging, paying 1 to summon out a guy with trigger. Then you pay 5 on your 10 on turn to play this guy out, restand your leader, and then you can swing again because your win attacking ability does not say once per turn. So you can use this ability twice in a turn if you are using Django. So just something to keep in mind, because you get effectively 3 bodies on the board while getting 2 8K swings, which is a pretty reasonable place to find yourself in the end game if you are still healthy enough to survive the turn. So that is kind of our East Blue cards. A lot of the other East Blue cards favor some of the other East Blue leaders a little bit more. So these are the ones I kind of highlighted as the most useful in Arlong. Moving on to our next category, we have Fishmen. So we have a Fishman type leader, so we get to take advantage of some of those things. First up, we have the Kami, who's your basic searcher, who looks at the top 4 for Fishman or Merfolk. If you're leaning into the Fishman, this can be pretty effective at finding the cards you might want. Next up, we have Jinbei, who's a pretty strong 2K that lets you play him out if you have 2 or less cards and a Fishman leader. 2 or less life cards and a Fishman leader, so that can be pretty effective. Just a good 2K that can come out with trigger. We have Fisher Tiger, who, if you're a Fishman, can also, in addition to having character rest, has the ability to rest an opponent's 6-cost or less character, which can be pretty important for going for game or for controlling the board. Then we have Jinbei, who's a 6-cost 8K no counter, with the ability to give one of your other Fishman characters character rush, and the ability to rest a 5-cost or less. Pretty strong here. Again, no trigger, so that you have to pay attention to how many of those non-trigger cards you have in your deck, but a good option that can't be used in a lot of other leaders. After that, we have this Jinbei from EBO4. He is a blocker with on KO. If your leader is Fisherman or Merfolk, you can play another green character with cost of 6 or less. So a pretty good sticky body that lets you continue playing out bodies. Happens to work well with Jinbei and Fisher Tiger as well. Especially being a blocker, you have a lot of control over when he might get KO'd, and otherwise he's just a good defensive body. Next up, we have the Hody Jones. This is a classic aggressive green card, and he happens to be a Fishman. So if you're already running a lot of the other Fishman package and Kami, then having searchable Hody Jones is quite strong. The one downside to this guy is taking life is kind of risky in a deck that otherwise has hand size problems. But it is a great way to finish the game, being able to get around multiple blockers and really go for a game. And finally, this is one that is from EBO4 again. Up to one of your Fishman type leaders or characters gains 3,000 power during this turn. Then you get to set one of your Fishman type characters as active, which can be really effective at defending your board and kind of forcing your opponent to swing into your life. And because of the number of triggers you're running, that means you're probably going to get a lot of free value out of your triggers, meaning a very aggressive start to the game. Final category I wanted to call out is kind of trigger support. So first up, we have the top four searcher for trigger cards and Lilith here. This one is quite good at finding the specific cards you need for the matchup. And then it also has a trigger itself. So in a pinch, you can still get a 7k swing off of your leader. Although I guess that's I say it now that I'm like hearing myself say it. It only costs 1, your leader ability costs 1. So it's not necessarily an advantage there. Next up we have this Onami. Great trigger on this one. KOing of an opponent's 5 cost or less. And it also gives your leader banish if you play it out, or either before or with your leader ability. You get a small discount if you're playing it off of leader ability, and otherwise just banish on an otherwise aggressive deck can be quite effective. Next up, we have Perospero and Cracker, who are good aggressively kind of statted and abilitied characters in the Big Mom Pirates type. That type is less common than it used to be, but these guys used to show up quite often in the Arlong decks, just giving you a lot of bodies that you could play out. Cracker in particular, giving you the ability to get double attacks at your opponent was pretty good. We have the classic Cheese Lord, Kapongang Beige, who always is something you'll consider if you're running a bunch of triggers, just as a way to just say, oops, I win, but not particularly effective in this deck if you end up trying to take that aggressive bent. Next up, we have some pretty standard aggressive triggers here in Kikunojo, who threatens to heal you, and Basil Hawkins, who threatens to burn their life on KO. These guys are both quite strong. Kikunojo missing a trigger or a counter, and Hawkins having the counter, so it's an interesting trade-off there. And finally, in this trigger category, we also have Baby 5, who's a newer addition. She's from OP12. She's a 2k counter, and if your leader is multi-colored, you get to draw 2 cards. Draw 2 cards is quite effective in this deck just because you are always going down on hand size when you lose your leader ability. So it's important to have some number of these cards to keep your hand healthy so that you don't just get counter rushed with characters. So those are the cards I wanted to highlight at first. And next I will hop over to the sim to show you guys a deck list. All right, now we have our deck list. A couple cards I realize I neglected to mention. Our leader is also a slash type leader. So I went ahead and added some of the slash type support with the Perona Searcher, who can search for Arlong and Buggy and Hachan and other Arlong, and Hawkins and Kikunojo, as all just really good targets. There were a couple other things that I wanted to include too if I was going to be including that package. Because she can search for green events, I added some Dead Man's Game, which are quite effective at dealing with those blockers. Added some Mihawks and a one of Shanks. This one I'm just kind of testing. Seems like an interesting one. Other cards that I wanted to highlight is the Otama as just an aggressive 2k option where you can get a whole bunch of extra damage off of this one. Harder to use in this leader than it is in Bonnie, but for the amount of extra pressure you can get, it seemed like a pretty nice add. And then this Monkey D. Luffy, who is a good way to get extra Dawn on an early turn and then use leader ability. Seems like a pretty effective pressure tool that is a pretty new one that I hadn't had on my radar very much yet. So this is the list. The core of your deck going to be the Kikunojo, Basil Hawkins, and Buggy and Arlong cards that you're going to play out mostly out of your leader ability. Try to get the board nice and swarmed using the various abilities to kind of put pressure on your opponent in different ways. Lord of the Coast fits in there, I guess, as well. And then you want to set up for a spot where you end the turn with an Arlong to block, to get rid of blockers, or Dead Man's Game to get rid of blockers, kind of going for that really aggressive go. And then your end game swings can come either from this Luffy, Shanks, Mihawk, or otherwise your other bevy of wide 5s and 6Ks. And you hope to get a couple of good triggers out of life and kind of go from there. So that is it for Arlong. Next week, we will be going over the blue leader from the set, who is OP03 Nami. She happens to be banned, so I will be going over her promo version, just so that I'm not going over useless information. But that will be a really interesting one. I hope you guys come check out that one, because I do think that, especially in the next couple sets, that leader is going to have a lot of fun support for it. And it is a leader that I have played in the past. It's a lot of fun to play. It's just one of those leaders that you have to kind of really get in the mindset for. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that next week, and I will see you then. Bye.